Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Battle Spirits Saga deck profile. And today we're going to be talking about the Birdfolk 2-cost list that has been quite a bit of fun to play, but also you get to just blame your losses on RNG. So why not have the best of both worlds with high rolling and, well, low rolling and just blame the deck, right? So for those that don't know, 2-cost is an archetype that was technically established in set 1 with the yellow starter deck, giving us some key pieces like Cat Sith, reveal a top card with Prince Penton. If it's 2 costs, you get to add to your hand, right? So naturally, this theme is going to build upon itself, and then we had things like God Beast that built onto it even more that rewarded you for playing these 2-drops. However, with the small card pool and with Fable Beast just well existing, and especially Paradise, it kind of fell to the side just to the overall meta flavor, and then also there were just better aggressive strategies that you could build upon in other colors. Well, it did get a bit of a support in set 2, and clearly this is an archetype that's going to continue to see more support as the card pool just gets deeper, right? As we have more 2-costs being printed, shocker, well, this deck, in theory, will get better over time, and things like Prince Penton and Cat Sith will have more likelihood to hit and draw cards. So I really do like this deck because it does, when it gets all going and you get those high rolls, right, you are just drawing a ton of cards. There is a lot of just recovery or just hand refill that you can pull off with this deck. However, you might be wondering, well, if we're doing all this 2-cost, if we're doing all this work, well, why not just go back to God Beast, right? Which is a very fair question. I think God Beast itself is still a very strong key spirit to use in yellow, and what a lot of people can do, especially now with Fabled Beast, right? You can just make a Fabled Beast deck. That is totally fine, and that's probably another video for another time. But what I really want to give the spotlight on for this video, and at least the initial testing that I've done, is that Air Brigade Captain Raphael is absolutely insane with the new Nexus, with the massive caveat of when you can actually pull it off, right? So why do we care about this list, and why are we trying to make Birdfolk a thing, more or less, right? So Raphael themselves have a lot of text, but kind of just breaking it down line by line, right? So you might look at it from the 4K, 5K, and 8K. The BPs might not be that exciting at first glance, but it pairs very well with the Nexus, which we'll talk about in a moment. But when the Spirit attacks, select a card that costs 2 from your trash and return it to your hand. This is any 2-cost. This is not color restricted. This is just on attack, and because you're going to see things like Topaz Radiance, we'll talk about a little bit more later, right? We can then beef up these BPs even more, or just cycle back those card draws. Maybe we need a Freeze-Tall that comes back. Maybe we want Prince Penton for a 4K to dodge removal that can also get us another 2-drop, right? There's a lot of just deck cycling and graveyard recursion that you can pull off, which makes this a key spirit worth looking into. The second effect, which when the spirit attacks, if you have 4 or more level 1 spirits, select 2 of your opponent's spirits, reduce their BP by 3,000 during the turn. I will admit, this is difficult to pull off. What's really important too is this is now a separation where this just says 4 or more level 1 spirits. Doesn't care their cost, doesn't care their color, it is just level 1. So this is where we might see a shift and where more people might have success, or, you know, once more testing is done, we might find with set 3 and when we get more Birdfolk, this is meant to be more of a mid-range strategy, right? Like Fable Beast played in set 1 where you had Carbuncle and various 4Ks that you just wanted to stick on the board. Raphael and Birdfolk in general might have a similar play pattern going forward with set 3, set 4 as this block format continues, where you're starting to see more of these Birdfolk come online. They're going to be more sticky, and then you can suddenly just build into more of a mid-range strategy, because shrinking things by 3K is, one, extremely relevant. If anyone that's played yellow, like, that is a pretty massive swing. And then when we have things like Harpy Nest to back it up as well, or the other combat tricks in yellow, this can very quickly turn into an engine that is going to just steamroll your opponent and get the value over it. Then if all that wasn't good enough, during either attack step, so it's important to note again, this is your turn and my turn, when a core is placed into your reserve, select one of your opponent's spirits, treat it as level 1 during this turn. So both offensively and defensively, you can now shrink your opponent's stuff. And keep in mind, if you select something for the minus 3,000 BP and then one of your spirits dies, you make it level 1, it has 3,000 BP, then it dies, right? So that's where now, if we're looking back at this in a way of thinking about an aggressive strategy, right, we want to shrink our opponent's board. Not a lot of cards have pro yellow or protection from yellow, so this means that our angelic pressures, our drowsies, if you want to go back to drowsies, right, Raphael's effect, these are all very live considerations for how we want to interact with the board. So yes, this is a deck that wants to be very, very, very heavily focused in the battle phase, and spoiler, where the meta is currently at right now, that's very hard to do with certain decks, but as we move forward and as we see the meta continue to evolve, if we get more into these very spirit versus spirit heavy focused metas, which is the best place for battle spirits to be, all things considered, I think Raphael can absolutely have a spot to shine once we get, one, again, the meta shifts, and two, a little bit more support. But I was very surprised the turns that I was able to, admittedly high roll a little bit, get those 2-cost value engines going. Raphael just being able to get all the effects on this card turned out to be quite strong, even without the Nexus. But what really brings us all together and why I'm putting so much hype on, where Birdfolk in general might go within the next set is Harpy Nest Palace. So during your attack step, when one of your Birdfolk spirits is blocked, treat the blocking spirit as level 1 during this turn. This is the other reason why we are playing the 2-drop Birdfolk, which, yes, we're playing Harpy Nest, so we don't have to really worry about core removal too much, but then the 2-drop also protects Raphael from core removal itself. It's a 2-drop, it's Birdfolk, it goes into this, right? This makes it very difficult for white decks to block your spirits all of a sudden, because now you're going to power them all the way down to level 1. You're going to be able to have all these BP boosting or negging effects that are going to make your Raphael even bigger, right? To neg them down to like, minus 3k, minus 6k if you have angelic pressure, or minus 3k with Raphael into minus 2k with drowsy, right? There's a lot of BP manipulation you can do there. And then suddenly with Raphael only being a 5k base, you're like, well, that's fine, right? I found myself as I was playing this, again, only got to test like 10 or so games, all things considered. But as I was testing this out in the games where I got to see Harpy Nest Palace come online, you very quickly start to realize the power that is in these 2 cards, even if the rest of the archetype isn't quite established just yet. But it is something that gives me a lot of hope for where set 3 might end up, where, yes, we are heavily relying again on the 2-cost synergy, right, from set 1, but there is a glimmer of hope here that we might see another, kind of more mid-range style of yellow deck appear, much like Fabled Beast right in set 1. I think overall, from a meta standpoint and just kind of who has the best engines and all that stuff, I think if you want to play yellow in this format, you still have to play Fabled Beast. I think just with Paradise and some of the other cards they got, like Dual Eel is insane, right? I think overall that just has the most support, but Luster did get a noticeable bump this set. 2-cost did get a noticeable bump this set. So it's nice to see the other decks in yellow at least coming online and getting more support. But ultimately, I think we'd have to see a support set of 0, right, for Fabled Beast in set 3 to not have Fabled Beast be kind of the best yellow deck. But all that out of the way, I really just want to stress just how strong that these 2 are. And then, not to be missed as well, but Harpy Nest Palace level 2, it's just giving us that protection versus purple, which, if you know, it's a very rough matchup for yellow. We did in the latest versus video, but in general, red is like yellow's #1 enemy. We're always going to lose to red. That's just how it is. That is like the Battle Spirits Saga, pie chart about everyone having at least one good and one bad matchup, where yellow's good matchup is supposed to be blue, and spoiler, that's not here yet, other than white, but that's going to be the red versus yellow matchup. And then purple, we have a little bit more game against it. Obviously, we have things that can shut off Nexus. We have now core protection. There's a few things that we can do, but at least where it's at currently, it's still a little bit rough, but there is hope right around the future with how the meta is going to shape up. And then, of course, getting green and then blue very soon helped as well. So with the Birdfolk out of the way, and here's the 2-drop that I was just spending all that time talking about, right? What else do we have? So again, Air Sniper Breeze, this is really just, it's a Birdfolk, and it's a 2-drop. That's really the most important thing about it. Again, yes, your yellow spirits that cost 4 or more can have their cores removed by your opponent's effect. Yes, this is going to protect Raphael for when they destroy your Nexus or something. So that's all fine and dandy, but generally speaking, it's just useful for something that's going to make one of your opponent's spirits a level 1. They are forced to block it. You're going to be able to knock them out. And then from there, you have, again, the Topaz Radiance or any other kind of BP combat tricks you want to use. Or, again, you let it die. You trigger Harpy Nest or Raphael's effect to make something else level 1, and then you kill one of the other guys. So that's all fine and good, right? But largely, again, it is just meant to be for the Birdfolk. From there, we have the Toy Hero Musashi, which, again, in the 2-cost strategy, has been working out quite well. Just getting more cards back to your hand. Yes, it does require very specifically when destroyed by your opponent, but it's not level restricted. So if they remove the chorus from it or something, right, you're still going to be able to get that draw. And yes, this is where, a little bit of that RNG excitement element comes into play, where you do have to rely on those hits on the top of the deck. What's really nice is for this one, and from a more deck building standpoint, this is just reveal a top card, right? It doesn't have to be a 2-cost. So it's just reveal the top card. If it has the same cost of any of your spirits, add it to your hand. So this is where it's probably supposed to be more in the other lander category, where you have a bunch of those like 3, 4s, and 5s that all want to play off one another. Where this now, if there's like an Absolute Ice Shield on top and we have a 4-drop, guess what? We just get to add it to our hand, right? It's a 4-cost spirit to add the Absolute Ice Shield hand. So there's like Some more deck building stuff that probably needs to be explored with Torihiro Musashi. And I know some people have been making some comments about how they've been having success with it in the community Discord as well. But it's one of those things that, like, it's a 2 cost. It's going to find us another 2 cost. So it is really just that self-cycling engine for its place in this deck in particular. And again, you'll notice that a lot of the BPs are lower for these style of cards. So that's, again, where Raphael's minus ability plus the level 1 ability can really come into play with me being able to sort of push through the damage that you really need to with these spirits. Moving into our classic, right? Going all the way back to the yellow starter deck with Rapier Knight, Cat Sith, and Prince Penton, right? These are the OGs, the 2-cost cyclers that we had in set 1 that are both just going to be, hey, I really want to make sure that we get that 2-cost, right? So again, for both of these, a thing to keep in mind that yes, we are in a very heavy yellow synergy, but this is just cards that cost 2. It is spells, it is spirits, it is in the future Nexus cards if we get them, right? So this is just getting 2-cost stuff to your hand. And when half of the deck is 2 costs, right, you're going to be able to get there. You are more likely to draw cards off these effects in set 2 than you were in set 1. So anyone who's played Cat Sith, right, the turns you just go turn 1 Cat Sith, draw 2 off the top, it feels great. Obviously, that's not always the case, as there is still an RNG side to it. But there are a couple turns like that where you realize that you are able to just aggro down your opponent. And we were playing Sword Angel as well. And again, to the surprise of some of our opponents, when you have like some of these slower engines that take a turn or 2 to get established, that you can just attack out of nowhere. And because you have things like Friezatol and Blessed Cathedral at level 2, you can just start swinging and not care. Your ramping cores, your drawing cards, right? You're constantly putting pressure on your opponent to block out that, unless they have like a suppression and can have multi-block effects, right? You are going to be able to push through damage eventually. Now, this does require you to have battle tricks because our spirits are lower BP and you still want to be able to remove some of your opponent's spirits so they just can't crack back at you, right? But that's, again, where Topaz Radiance and some of the other cards that we're playing can really come through and shine. What I really important to note about these two in particular, we are very limited on what spirits can get to 4K, which, you know, Burning Force, Angelic Pressure, Exhaust Nexus, right? There is a lot of removal for 3K. It's one of those special magical thresholds that we talk about for removal, at least in set 1 and set 2, that it can be difficult to stick some of these. That's why Fabled Beast has been doing so well with like Hippocampo and Dual Eagle, and even the vanillas that we're playing could easily get to 4K and dodge a lot of that and just be, you know, decent blockers. Now, of course, we do have things like Tin Soldier, which can be a 5K blocker, which has been really good in a variety of decks, but it's not 2 cost. We can't, you know, just reveal it off top and high roll. We do have to at least stay on theme. So I'm really curious to see where this evolves and what other 2 costs we might get, or we just, you know, go back to it and just put a Bullet Ray or Flame Fishes right in here and try to get more of that off-color support, just so 1, we could have more 2-drops, and 2, you know, it does help make some of those spells easier that we'd also be playing anyway. So definitely a very strong consideration there. And then, of course, we got to give it a special mention is Burning Force. Yes, right now you're playing it in the meta because everyone just needs to blow up Nexus cards, as it were. But if you've played yellow, you realize just how strong this card can be, right? If you are someone who's ever gotten to live the yellow dream of Exhaust Nexus into Burning Force, you realize what a absolute house this card can be, with Raphael being able to shrink 2 6Ks down to 3K, and then Burning Force removes it. And also, because we saw some spoilers of set 3 already, we are getting 4K removal, right? So there might be other things in red that we might want to combo with this in set 3 that Raphael's minus 3K effect is going to be extremely relevant. So yes, I will say that even with the conversations around how many Nexus cards people are running and how many Burning Force are in each all decks, like, moving beyond that conversation, there's still very much a consideration for running for Burning Force in this deck in particular because of how absolutely cracked it is with Raphael's effect. Again, you do have to work for it. It does take you a bit to get there, but because of its flexibility, because of the things you can be doing with Burning Force anyways, I think that this is one of those decks that could still benefit from running a 4 of going forward into set 3 or even set 4 because it just pairs so well with BP minusing effects, right? So definitely keep that in mind. I think Burning Force is a card that, you know, yellow can really utilize, and we might see more of it in the Luster style of strategies as well. But again, I just want to get a special shout out here to the synergy that it has with Raphael. And then, of course, if you're playing the more mid-range or control style of yellow decks, just Burning Force Exhaust Nexus is nothing new, but something that's still very exciting and feels so good to pull off when you finally get there. And then we got to talk about more draw stuff, right? So keeping in the 2-cost theme and being able to keep through, like, how do we cycle through our deck? How do we find the Raphael? Because the one thing that I found while playing this deck above all is that it is difficult to find Raphael, right? You need that key spirit. You need to see it every single game. So how do we get there, right? We saw those tutors that reveal, or I shouldn't say tutors, but searchers that reveal top card and draw it if it's a 2-cost, right? Well, Freeze-Tall can just help us with raw draw as well as Topaz Radiance, right? We're going to have a lot of symbols on the board. We're going to be able to just vomit 2 costs to the board. Topaz Radiance is great. It's a 2k buff, draws us a card. We just want to cycle through the deck, right? You draw it off Prince Penton, you draw it off Cat Sith. And then Freeze-Tall, this is one that I really wish it was the other version of, I forget what the card's name was in Japanese Battle Spirits, but there's actually a buff card of this that's just whenever one of your 2 spirits die, not in combat, right? Just draw the card, and that's what we really need. But yes, Freeze-Tall does require you to be in combat for the fact to be in that specific battle. But again, this is where we go back to, it does help line up with what we want to be doing. We want our 2 costs to die in battle while Raphael is being able to do their battle tricks, right? To get minus 3k, make something level 1, then you kill off another thing, right? Swing with another 2k, and you're able to quickly chip away at their blockers as long as their level 1 is at a 3k or less, even if they have it pumped up to a current 7k or 8k, right? So God Slaying is another card that I think in the lore set, which would be a huge benefit to this style of deck. Of course, it's not a 2 cost, so that does make it a little bit difficult to not be able to draw it right off of the various reveal effects we have, but something to consider about the various battle tricks that you want to be running, because we just do need more ways to deal with bigger threats, and Raphael does help, but it only helps us so much. But again, these 2 really being MVPs and just helping us draw through the deck and be able to get the key spirits that we need when we need to see them. So with that is a overview of the 2-cost Birdfolk deck, and one that I'm honestly pretty excited for to see where it lands in set 3. Again, I think right now you do have to be very focused on the 2-cost synergy, because Raphael and the Nexus are kind of like the only good standalone right now. And yes, again, we are playing the 2-cost because it's 2 costs, but there's only one other Birdfolk, and spoiler, we didn't include it here because I don't think it's that good, but we could get more Birdfolk in set 3 that could really help make this list shine. So again, it is a lot of fun. When you high roll, and yes, when you low roll, you do unfortunately low roll and miss on those reveals. But when the engine gets going, once you start to get the Raphael triggers and get the Nexus protection, it becomes really difficult for your opponent to block. And spoiler, it does kill things like Axebiter. It does kill things that would normally have protection by reducing it to level 1. That's why Clavis has been so good, at least from an attacking standpoint, even if the Luster archetype overall might not be where it wants to be. But Clavis is also just like, all right, I'm here, I'm ready to fight, and anything that blocks me is going to die, right? So I think there's a lot of benefit to be said about the yellow kind of winning BP strategy that they have, right? With Raphael and Clavis doing their own thing. We have Godslaying coming soon. So I think we're going to start to see a little bit more of a development where yellow has various ways to always win in battle in the way they want to, that isn't strictly just BP minusing sort of effects, right? So really, again, excited to see where this deck list goes. So with that, my friends, I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll be going to PA this weekend, right? Going to Monroeville for the Grand Open Regional. Not sure how much other videos I'll get out between now and then. We're going to be joining the Church of Penton podcast, which is right around the corner. We're going to be recording our first episode here soon. But otherwise, tons of more Battle Spirits Saga content to look forward to in the future. So with that, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.